right, we are back for another episode of Beyond Barriers. Beyond Barriers is a conversation with leaders and evangelists about navigating an effective accessibility strategy. In these discussions, guests get to share their setbacks and their successes with a primary focus on how they overcome specific obstacles in the world of accessibility. My name is Brian Gavin. I'm the co-founder of Wally. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Sumair. Sumair, thank you so much for joining.
It's my pleasure.
So we have a lot of interesting things to talk about, given your background. So I always like to get started with understanding a little bit about who you are and how you got into the space of accessibility.
Okay, I'll start with the very start of my journey. Originally, I didn't have a computer science background. I started with a business degree, basically in marketing. And a lot of the focus of our studies was around how do we remove the pain points of people and how do we improve our product offerings and how do we remove the barrier between the customers and the product. So I had to do a lot of workshops and just went through the subject matter a lot more and in a lot more depth than others, I would say. And
Did
after,
accessibility come? Sorry, I'm curious, just because you've um, we already got the ideas flowing here. The pain points of the customer that you studied, was accessibility a specific area of pain points that you reviewed?
yeah, definitely it was one of the important areas that we had to look at. And accessibility usually it does not come very obvious to a lot of the people in the industry, but yet it is something that affects real people in the real world. And that's how I got introduced to the subject matter of accessibility. And then I changed, basically transitioned into a different career, a career of software engineering. I started with a basic boot camp where a lot of computer fundamentals were taught. And over there, I had a friend who was basically paralyzed from the neck down. And he had to use his voice to navigate everything. And he was really great at it. I mean, he was a social media marketer, and he was not only earning a living, but he was basically a pillar in his community. And his story really inspired me. And I explored this matter with him, had really great conversations, and learned more about his journey. And that really gave me a sense of, this is something that I want to do when I'm in software engineering, something I want to explore further. And that's how the idea was planted in my brain that this is the field that I want to explore more. And after that, I joined uh, Mozilla as an open source contributor. And there, people were, when I started, of course, I was a junior contributor. And among other junior contributors, I was the only one keen on working on accessibility related issues and talk about accessibility because other people they wanted to talk or work on more exciting stuff, and I was the only one who basically considered this part important. So
Exciting.
and the mentors I found over there, they were phenomenal people, and they wanted me to research and go into depth about accessibility, and they really supported how I wanted to proceed and how I wanted to think about it. So that's my original story about how I got started with accessibility. Then I explored it further, explored testing, like what strategy I want to use, what strategy that overall is effective, and how do we combine automated testing and testing from APIs and having our own custom logic, and how do we make that custom logic um, into something that's not just something other developers just go ahead and comment out. Like we wanted those tests to be more robust and not just stale tests that fail every time any little thing changes. So that was a journey and really exciting for me to uh, to start at.
I'm curious, you mentioned the focus from an automation perspective and um, developing integrated testing at the development level. How you kind of hit the nail on the head with the false positives when things change. Um, what was the framework, or how did you address not having custom logic, but also being accurate? And I'm curious what that journey looked like there, because that's a huge pain point we hear a lot, right?
Yeah, basically, a lot of our APIs that we work with, they are just testing the low hanging fruit, the color contrast issues, are your labels missing, not using semantic HTMLs. These are the basic issues, the low hanging fruit that most of the APIs are focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important at the same time to basically test overall the design of the
Yeah.
website, because a website can be inaccessible by design and still pass those tests. So I wanted to make sure that I'm building something, I'm writing some tests that are actually able to capture the problems with the design of the website. And that was a really exciting thing for me to work on.
Yeah.
And it's very hard that you can write tests that don't fail, that don't give false positives. But if you are trying to if you're trying to test for the outcomes, not the implementation, you can really get that right most of the times. So it's important not to be too stringent, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you are looking at certain aspects of the design and making sure that those tests are passing.
You and I didn't get into the depths of the automation testing that you were doing as we were getting to know one another, and it's exciting to know that the usability of the site is where, if I'm gathering correctly, you're focused on building out scale to. I'm curious, are the solutions that you develop to test the products that you're working on within Mozilla, are those test scenarios itself being made open source, or are those helping the community at large that focuses on the open source development?
It's mostly within the community,
Yeah.
but these solutions are being implemented and talked about in other spheres of Mozilla as well. And I'm certainly talking to other folks, other teams, like how we can improve accessibility at their project. And overall, I think there is a wave of interest in accessibility that was not present before. Um, and yeah, that's been the overall scenario that I've observed during these times.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope that it's open to public more in the future, and more technologies, even the consumer facing technologies, are focused upon. Right now they are in a very good standing, but I think there are further improvements down the road that we are going to be implementing.
Yeah. I have this like, weird hypothesis, and I'm sure I'm not the first one to think about this type of thing, but the operating system, Android, and iOS from a mobile capacity, other manufacturers, or providers of cell phones around the world, right? Even just in the last couple weeks, there's been huge releases from both of them on accessibility. The interaction functionality that these applications are providing, in many ways, it is kind of glossaried under the accessibility section of your phone preferences, right? But it's changing the way that you can experience content to solve for gaps in visual, hearing, and other cognitive um, abilities that need enhancement. And so now, as the applications are designed and developed, and you're creating code, how do you best test for the usability of a design against the functionality that these operating systems are providing, so that you almost, you want two players who are of equal caliber to be on the ball field at the same time? And the easiest conversation to have with someone who says, well, I address accessibility, is use Apple VoiceOver and navigate your website. And it's, I'm still having this conversation today with brands, because the mentality about how accessibility has been addressed from a low hanging fruit, as you've put it, that's been like good enough. And I think to provide that experience, because I saw a statistic, something like 60% of mobile users are setting an accessibility preference. Probably needs a rebranding, because some people are like, oh, this isn't accessibility. This is just a better website experience. But my point is that progression of usability and the ability to maximize uh, digital interaction is like, that's the exciting piece, right? Like you said, the buzz that you're getting when you tell a designer and a developer that like the usability and the experience and the, I don't know, the MPS, the satisfaction of our users is going up. That's exciting. Go dressed YCAG compliance laws. Like I hear you.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I think in accessibility, we see that a lot of people, they are not coders. Like they they don't understand, they don't appreciate how you build accessibility in the websites. So there are these companies that are providing accessibility overlays, you might have noticed.
Hmm.
And these overlays, they appear to solve all of your problems, but at the same time, if you look deep into it, you're just providing a band-aid over your underlying native accessibility issues, and not actually fixing the problem. Um, and this applies to overall all the platforms. Like we are seeing that people are hesitant to work on the native accessibility aspect of the experiences. Um, Overall, I would say that we need to gear more towards how we can create awareness about the native aspect of accessibility. Like a website can be accessible according to the WCAG standards, but at the same time, there are a lot of neurodivergent people. Like there is no neuronormal. Like people have a wide range of learning disabilities. People have impairment with their executive function. Like if you are providing them with a lot of sensory input all at once. Um,
Which that is.
and yeah, it is a problem. This won't be detected by any uh, API. This is something that you have to develop an appreciation for, like how do you want your users to interact with your product. And I did a lot of freelance work as well with companies, and I'm always the one um, to shift their focus around accessibility. And in a lot of companies, for example, at one company, I had the experience where they wanted a lot of adverts, and I I made sure that they understand that what these adverts are doing for the accessibility and how they're damaging the attention
Mm,
for a lot of the users. Because I have talked to a few people who basically have these issues, learning disabilities, and basically some people are they cannot imagine, like they lack the ability to, for example, if you put them within a flow within a website, they will not be able to figure out where exactly they are within
yep.
the flow or within the user journey. So I always try to make sure that whatever I'm working on, the adverts or all the sensory inputs that are excessive, they are geared down to the minimum.
Mm,
And even if a lot of websites they have these disparate adverts going, they are totally different. They have different colors. Some have video content, and these they create a lot of problem for the users. So the adverts, if you're implementing them, make sure that all of them are kind of similar. They are in sync. They are not just auto playing um, videos. And you want to make sure that if you are putting any videos in the content, if they're ads, they're not auto playing. You want to give the user the option to play the video if they want it. So yeah, that's been my experience overall, and I think overall a lot of companies are realizing that they cannot deal with accessibility just to abide by the law. They want to make sure that a lot of user base is actually able to interact with their content, because currently there are more than 1.5 billion people who are uh, in some way they need accessibility. They have an accessibility need, and a lot of them, like of course, the first line of defense is making sure that your website is operable by your keyboard. But at the same time, you want to make sure that there are no hidden things that you leave out that can potentially create the problem for your users. And my job is to basically identify those areas and making sure that I can test for them and provide solutions for them.
Tell me, so the solutions are what I'm curious about, and I would imagine things are fairly innovative, and you have a lot of smart people around you at Mozilla, right? Tell me a little bit about the solutioning strategy, right? I feel like we're like right at this quantum leap where it was like, okay, I'm not going to solution at the end of the development or design process. I need to incorporate it into my flow. Thank you for sharing how the overlays need a little bit of an upgrade. So, where are the innovations on the solution side that you see?
Um, I would say that on the solution side, where we have the basic, um, you know, we want to develop a basic understanding of how anything that we do on a website is going to create a difference for the experience of the user. It's the basic things like you want to make sure that if you're providing large body of content on your website, you want to make sure that there are TLDRs, like too long, didn't read, because a user who is using just a screen reader, they don't want to go through all the content only to realize that it was the wrong content, that they didn't want to interact with it, and they just wasted 5 minutes of their time. And of course, that's not just the time, they wasted their energy. So a lot of these things are pretty basic, like common sense, that you want to use to create solutions for these things. And in the future, of course, we will have, and we are currently developing, overall in the accessibility space, devices and that work with artificial intelligence and machine learning,
Mm.
computer vision. For example, we will be able to give a blind user smart glasses, and they can use these glasses to basically see, not in a sense to see, but the glasses will just speak like what they are looking at. The computer vision technology will enable us to do that.
I guess I that it's amazing that technology is coming, right? And we've actually at Wally done some prototyping on um, generative AI solutions, the solution side, right? There with any process, right? If you get garbage in, you get garbage out. So, what is being done to make the development and the design of the digital experiences that the glasses will read off of and interpret, or for maybe the next foreseeable future, the iPhone will have to use as the information to discern? What are some of those solutions that are being done there? That's like I'm curious about.
Well, mostly it's around computer vision technology. Like computers, like the algorithms are becoming smarter.
Hmm.
They are able to recognize objects faster than before. The technology was always there, but um, right now it's getting much better and much closer to something that is actually something that could go mainstream in the foreseeable future. Yes, of course, machine learning and artificial intelligence, generative AI, they are not perfect tools. They have their problems, but it's something that gives the users the first line of defense, you can say, against the conflict between their accessibility needs and the world around them. So
Mm.
yeah, I do see further improvement along these lines.
Where would you say some of the existing challenges remain for you? Certainly, your trajectory in the accessibility space and the success you've had. I guess a side question is the folks you're collaborating with at Mozilla are global, right? So I guess it's interesting, one, to know a little bit about how you have this where is the universal adoption happening, right? And two, where the challenges are that you're still kicking and you're like, man, we need a solution for this.
Um, I would say that most of the problems that are currently with the accessibility, it's the attitude of people
Mm.
around accessibility, because that's very hard to change. It's people, and it's changing at Mozilla, but not as much as I would like to, or as much as there should be. And there is one problem that I do see, is that with the no-code tools like Wix and other tools, this has enabled a whole swath of people to build websites that are not accessible, because those
Mm.
those people are not familiar with coding. Like they
Yeah, you mentioned
definitely
this
cannot.
earlier.
Yeah, and there are like millions of websites, millions of shopping websites that are not accessible because they are built from these tools, and their owners and people who have created them, they don't have any knowledge or any appreciation for how to build accessibility into these websites. So that's definitely a challenge to see. Like a lot of times, I have worked with clients, freelancing clients, and they are talking about, okay, they have created this website out of Wix, and they are getting complaints from people about its usability. So that's definitely something that I've faced.
It's I know there's probably a second part to what you're going to say, but I just want to, you mentioned this in the beginning part of the conversation, right? If you're a developer, there almost in some ways needs to be a passion. I think the collaboration and the knowledge sharing that you're doing is awesome. So there's the technical solution. We don't like the band-aid, and then there is no code ready made site templates that don't take into account the usability needs, period. How and then you have, vision goggles that are going to replace it. And it's like the to go from code fix to Wix to these glasses seems like some quantum leaps, but I agree that that's where it's headed. What's the solution to get through these challenges now? I mean, you can make a small business owner aware about why accessibility matters, but they may just not have the skill sets that you have as a developer. And then we're back at square one.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the big question of accessibility, because we have seen that a lot of the tools that we can provide users, for example, tools like these overlays, they apparently solve the problem for the website. They look like they are doing something real for the user, but a lot of times they are uh, they are more trouble than a solution, because first of all, the overlay itself, it's something that is controlled by another company. The data that's generated, it's controlled by that company, and you're not sure if that data is going to any third parties or not. That's just
Yeah.
one of
And
the concerns.
so many of these mobile sites now, I have a chat bot, I have an accessibility bot, I have a terms and privacy policy accept. Like yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's an area that and especially like at the browser level where Mozilla is at, it's almost like, well, how can we take a quantum leap there? And we're going to help these Wix and Shopify sites of the world almost, dynamically render the better experience. There's a lot there, but yeah, I mean, I appreciate so much what's happening at Mozilla, and then that at scale, it's used by billions of people to as a browser, right? But then we still have this, where do you start, right? So much of the passion that you're speaking about is probably and firsthand experiences that you had, right? That was your nudge into this matters. I guess that's a lot of how it's going to happen, but I'm excited about the quantum leaps we'll see to kind of make this process easier, to make accessibility not as much of a distinct cognitive brainwave, if you will, but instead a natural thought process and flow with solutions that are available. So you touched on, I mean, I guess, AI in the goggles is a little bit of the advancement, but is there huge disruptions that you're putting your eyes on that are going to, let's say in the next year, change the game?
I think that one of the things that can change the game for a lot of people is, we want to have different solutions for different areas of accessibility. For example, the solution around content, like for example, if there's a blog, it has separate needs to make it accessible to people. So we might have a tool that's geared towards only readable content and making it more accessible. Similar can be the case with video content. Like there can be a tool that only focuses on making the video content accessible, rather than having tools that take your whole website and try to make it accessible. I think if you break these things into parts, like, and somehow make sure the data itself and the security implications, the data is not going anywhere else and is still with the original owner of the site, I think that's the way to make a leap in this case, because still a lot of people, they're not going to have the knowledge about how to implement accessibility in their websites, especially if they're not coders themselves.
Hmm.
So
But I guess selecting a really nice blog design or a video experience is a little bit easier and probably a little bit more of a flashy object. Be like, blog is what I'm investing my content writer's time into. Of course, I want the best experience. I mean, it's very logical, right? Like that, the idea of specialization within the accessibility space, which means there's, you know, it's still a very small space in terms of contributors.
yeah, but I think it's something that will ultimately gain more trust, because right now with these accessibility overlays, there are these privacy concerns, and we have seen that if the user has their own settings for the browser that should take precedence, and then overlays trying to do something else, then overall the experience comes out to be totally unusable by the user.
Yeah.
So these are the core issues around these overlays that people are facing.
Brilliant. Well, Sumair, a very interesting and exciting way to leave off the conversation with um, that thought process, because it's, you know, how do you dissect a problem? Well, tackle it in priority and bits and pieces, I think, is oftentimes a way to go at it. So I want to thank you so much for joining today's conversation. Shared a lot of knowledge, a lot of inspiration for those that listen, and thank you again.